Welcome to part 2 of my series going over the fights from Record of Ragnarok. So, after the first part, in which we obviously went over the first round, we are now moving on to the second round of Ragnarok, which I will preface as saying this is generally agreed upon as being the best fight in the series. It's not my personal favorite, but I know a lot of people consider it to be the best, and I definitely understand why, because it is exceptionally good. For this video, I'm going to be going through chapters 7 through 12, which cover the direct aftermath of round 1 and the very end of round 2. So, to start, we have the immediate reaction to Thor killing Lulu. You have Zeus in his throne, freaking out and yelling. He's crouching on the armrests and pointing his hands up in the air, yelling, which is contrasted with Hermes, who's standing right next to him looking all serious. You'll come to find that Zeus, despite being the leader of the gods and looking like a super old man, he tends to act like a small child. Then you get reactions from Shiva, who's doing some really impressive stretching with his legs, and just sort of flashing over to Thor and the very gross remains of Lulu's face, which was smashed with Mjolnir. Then you get this really good shot with Brunhild standing and Geir collapsed on the ground, with Heimdall announcing that humanity has taken its first step towards extinction, and they have this spotlight coming down behind them. It's a very dramatic, good-looking panel. This series has a lot of these, and I love them. So, as mentioned, or I may not have mentioned this in the previous video, that the way this tournament works is it's not a bracket. It's a best of 7 out of 13 fights. So it's a numbers game. With humanity having taken the first loss, this is a bad sign. The results of the first fight have shown that it's not going to be easy at all for the humans to win. You could say that they have all the odds stacked against them. The fact that the strongest human in history was totally obliterated by Thor should show that. I mean, yes, they were equal in strength, but the kind of damage that Thor was putting out with Mjolnir was just insane. There was no way Lulu could compete with that. It wasn't that close. Then you get some reactions with the humans. You have the 3 dudes from Lulu's backstory doing a toast to him. And then you see the generic gods in the audience being assholes and telling the humans to bow down and offer their lives as tribute. And right after that, you have Geir talking about how they're acting like children, which is funny because Geir at least looks like a small child. And I would say the gods being childlike is something that we obviously see in Zeus, and I guess that's something that's not just unique to him. Then Brunhild starts to walk off, and Geir chases after her, and then we see in the arena, after Thor's victory, that red hair is crying and neighing behind Thor. And then you have the leader of Lulu's army, and then the rest of his army there with him, and they charge at Thor, because if Lulu's dead, well then they think that they might as well be dead too. So Thor willingly accepts this, and in an interesting showing of his character development, so far, compared to the way he was before the fight starts, he says that he will send all of Lulu's men as offerings in his name to Lulu. So, when Thor started off, he didn't seem to really care about anyone. He was extremely sort of detached, which was to be expected based on his backstory and his character of being someone who is just beyond everyone else, to where he is now, a god sending people's lives as offerings to a human It's a very huge sign of development and is also an example of the sort of thing that you can expect to see with the other character development from the other fighters going forward into the future. It's at this point that the true full stakes of the outcomes of these battles is revealed when Geir asks Brunhild what would happen to Rangris and Lulu since they died, and this is shown with Thor, who just annihilated Lulu's army, and it's explained that since everyone there at Ragnarok is a soul, that when they are killed there, their soul is destroyed, so they just stop existing. There's no afterlife for them, so they're just returned to non-existence. So the stakes are very high. It's not like a lot of the times where if a character dies, oh, they go to heaven or whatever. No, they just return to nothingness. And this is accompanied by showing how Lulu and his armies and Rangri's remains all turn to dust, as you see Thor sort of stare off into the sky as their remains fade away, which is another really good shot. Thor's really long hair makes for some really good panels with him. But yeah, Geir doesn't take this revelation very well, and Brunhild seems kind of freaked out about it, but it's made very clear here that the Valkyries are really putting everything on the line here with facing the gods. Moving on, now that round 1 is over and round 2 is about to start, it's up to Brunhild to pick who the next fighter of for humanity will be, and she decides that they will go with the person who among all of humanity is the most detested by the gods, the man with the strongest will, file number 1. I think the fact that he's described as the man with the strongest will is something that's overlooked a lot. I don't hear it talked about that often, but it's extremely important as we get further into the fight. So the arena's cleaned up, you have the audiences sort of cheering and stuff, and then you get the introduction for humanity's newest fighter. So you have the human being lifted up into the sky on this pillar, sitting in this very famous pose, and then you have all of these animals running out. You've got like gazelles and boars and lions and a giraffe, and then they start to quote the Bible. Now, considering the existence of seemingly all the polytheistic religions in this setting, it's not really clear where God is, like the super Christian God. Either they're just quoting the Bible because that is the human text used to explain it, or the Christian God is actually there, but he hasn't made any sort of appearance. But this intro is super sick. You have the human jumping down off of the pillar, and oh man, Heimdall's hype speech about him being the very essence of a man. You have the audience's reactions to him. No one can believe it's him. All of the women in the audience are kind of sweating a little bit when they notice that he's only wearing like a leaf over his crotch, because, I mean, clothes didn't exist back then, so he didn't wear any. He's got this apple, this very famous apple, that he holds up into the air as all of humanity salutes their father, and he takes a bite out of the apple. And when his name is revealed by Heimdall, they don't actually say it first. Instead, they show the reactions of everyone in the audience, including Zeus and Michelangelo. And then they reveal that it's Adam. Oh boy. Oh man. If you've already read this series, which I'm going to assume you are, because why are you watching this if you haven't read the series already? Go read it. Adam is a fan favorite, to say the very least. And his appearance here as being kind of like a kid, he looks kind of, got a baby face. It's pretty misleading. But this is the reveal for humanity's second fighter, Adam. And he also doesn't like the apple, he thinks it's too sour. Which is funny, because of how important that apple ends up being. But yeah, that was an entire chapter dedicated just to the aftermath and the introduction of one fighter. Which is something that will happen again later, but they didn't do that for the most recent fight, and I hope they don't continue doing it, because the series is a monthly release, so getting one chapter to only have one of the fighters revealed and not even start the fight would just be, I don't even know how to describe it. It would probably be very grueling. I wasn't following the series when this fight started, but I can imagine having to wait 2 months for the fight to start after the last one ended would just be grueling. As I mentioned a second ago, Adam does not look very manly. He looks kind of, well, they say it themselves, he looks kind of cute. But other than being toned, he's a very big contrast to Lulu, who is this giant, muscular warrior guy. And even the people in the audience are sort of confused. He looks very out of place. But now that Adam's been revealed, it's time to reveal the Gods fighter for the second round. And Heimdall begins to announce that it will be the strongest god in all of India representing the gods this round. Until he doesn't come out, because they had some technical difficulties. And then it becomes night. Like, I guess the gods can just do that, because of course they can, they're the gods. And then someone comes out playing air on the G-string on a violin, and you get the reactions from Mozart and Bach. They can't believe how good this rendition on the violin is. And then it's revealed to be Hermes, our wonderful butler man, doing a very good job playing on the violin. He looks very pleased with himself. And then Brunhild is very freaked out by this, because Brunhild seems to have expectations of who will be fighting in each round. She expected that Thor would be fighting, and then has actually been told up front with the fights after this who would be coming next. But she seemed to be under the anticipation that someone else would be coming. And then you have the reveal of Zeus, who's there, being sort of announced by Hermes playing his violin, and Brunhild and Geir are freaked out. Brunhild is pissed. The gods are freaked out by this. They can't believe that he's here, and all of the humans are super confused because, like how Adam is this cutesy, dare I say, twinkish kind of guy, Zeus is this decrepit, short old man. So Zeus snaps his fingers and tells Hermes to start playing sort of his theme song, and then Hermes seems to enjoy it a lot with this anime pose and his eyes turning into a weird design, and I guess he yells out "Slaughter in the God's Ring," which is a cool line. But then he starts playing on like 10 violins at once, and as Heimdall is doing the hype speech, Zeus is doing this wacky 70s dance as the entire audience is hyping him up as the GFOC, the Godfather of the Cosmos. And as they're chanting this, they have this entire page dedicated to Zeus dancing like a crazy guy, and Hermes playing along with him. It's a sight to behold. Geir and Brunhild have no idea what they're looking at. And then Zeus sort of claps his hands together, and then his legs get super huge and buff. And then his chest gets super huge and buff. And then his whole body's buff. He's now like 10 feet tall. He went from being like a 4-foot tall, skinny old dude to being this giant mass of muscle. So, this announces the second fighter for the gods, Zeus, which leads to the excitement of the gods and the shock and horror of the humans, because this is a big surprise for narrative reasons to have the essentially final boss show up in the second round of the tournament. Even Brunhild didn't expect it. So now that Zeus has made his grand entrance, we get a short flashback to a few minutes later to explain why Shiva is not coming out. And they go to show Shiva, who is getting all hyped and ready to go out and fight. And then Zeus shows up. And he tells him, it's my turn now. Like, he puts his hand on his shoulder and he gives him this creepy look. Shiva is not having it. Shiva starts, like, yelling at him and cursing at him. And eventually he gives in because Zeus pushes him to the ground, like, pressing down on his shoulder. Shiva threatens to fight him, but then decides not to, and decides that, whatever, I'll just let Zeus fight, but says that Zeus owes him one. So, this is the start of a meme about Shiva getting cucked, where Shiva wants to fight, and then Zeus is like, but actually no. This has led to some discussion about exactly how strong Shiva is, specifically if he's stronger or weaker than Zeus. Obviously, he's one of the big pantheon gods for the Indian pantheon, but also this has led to some discussion about exactly, is Shiva on the same level of Zeus, or is he way weaker than him? It's not really clear if Shiva is scared of Zeus or if he just doesn't feel like fighting him right now. You can really interpret it either way, because he shows some faces that could very easily be interpreted as scared, but at other times he just seems very pissed off. So you could argue that he doesn't want to mess with Zeus because he knows he can't take it, or he just doesn't feel like getting into a scrap with him right now when something this important is going on. But with that, we go back to the present. And Zeus asks Adam if he's going to have a Voland. And then he looms over him like, the author, or the illustrator, does a lot of shots when a character's being menacing, and they'll have, like, the entire background blackened out around them. So you have the gigantic Zeus looming over Adam and saying, if you don't have your Voland, kiddo, it'll be over before you know it. And then Adam is unfazed by this. Adam doesn't really give a shit about anything Zeus is doing. And then you have the arrival of Adam's Valkyrie on the Pegasus. This is Reganleaf. She jumps down from the air, and they do their Voland Unite thing or whatever, and they do a parody of that very famous picture of Adam, like, laying on the rock, pointing his hand out to touch the hand of God. It's very cool. This fight, due to Adam being in here, has a lot of references to biblical stuff and to Renaissance paintings. So that's already, we're getting off to a good start here. So Reganleaf bonds with Adam, I guess. They do the Volan process, and she turns into his weapon, which is a knuckle duster, or a brass knuckle, which everyone is very excited about, including Adam. He was hyped up as being a specialist in unarmed combat, so just having something that makes him punch stronger is very nice. And even Zeus himself is very excited. And with this, we get the start of the second battle of Ragnarok. So that was another whole chapter. This was 2 whole chapters just to get to the start of the next fight. So that is a lot of time, actually, to dedicate just to introducing these characters. Jesus Christ, we're already 20 minutes in, and we are only just now getting to the start of the fight. So now you have Zeus, who's very excited by the fact that Adam has a brass knuckle. Heimdall talks about how Adam wants to have a fist fight with the King of the Gods, which is already a fantastic concept. For our character, for the people that come in from the fighters' backstories for Adam, we have Cain and Abel, who famously didn't get along, to put it lightly. I know that their characterization or whatever in here will probably offend some Christians. No one cares. But yeah, they're hyped about it. Then you get this page where they show Adam's face and they zoom in on his eye, which is very important when we get to that. So Zeus is complimenting Adam on his weapon. He thinks it's very nice, of course. And then Adam asks Zeus where his weapon is. The gods are freaked out by how casually he's talking to him. Gare is mortified. Zeus says that he's going in barehanded because he wants to hear the sounds that Adam's bones make when he grinds them into dust. So he's going to be going barehanded. He, kisses his knuckle like an asshole, and he seems very not serious about this whole thing. Though, to be fair, Adam isn't either. He tells Zeus that he'll probably regret not bringing a weapon. So then, immediately, Zeus rushes in and does an attack. Adam's eyes are wide open, and Adam dodges it barely. He just moves his head a little. The punch moved in 1/100th of a second. He sort of got Adam's hair, but that was really it. He didn't get him. Zeus is kind of impressed, and then starts hopping in the air again because he's hyped. You have the audience reaction to Adam dodging this super fast strike, and then you have the introduction of our next and main god commentator in the form of Ares, the Greek god of war, who is Hermes' brother. So what you're going to have with the fights going forth is you're going to have Hermes and Ares hanging out, and they'll sort of have varying amounts of commentary. They probably say the most for this round, obviously because their dad is in it. So Zeus gets very excited about Adam being able to dodge his punch, so then he starts doing these flurries of combos, going in 1,000th of a second, a 10,000th of a second, 100,000th of a second, and then he goes into this attack called a meteor jab when he does a bunch of strikes at once, so it's like a meteor shower. They show all of the fists approaching Adam at the same time, so it's that anime JoJo Fist to the North Star thing that you just see in anime all the time. Now, obviously, this isn't how punches work, because they don't all move through the air before hitting you, but whatever, we don't care, it's cool. And even as Zeus is throwing all of these punches at ridiculous speeds, Adam is dodging all of them. He's not even moving his legs, he's just moving his head and abdomen to not get hit by them. Now, Zeus throws a punch in, oh god, that's about, I want to say like 1/1,000,000th of a second, and then moves into a kick called the Divine Axe, so they have a giant axe drawn behind it, symbolically. Ares assumes that this is going to immediately kill Adam, but then he just jumps over it, and he's totally fine, which seems to surprise Zeus. Zeus makes a comment about how Adam's not going to beat him by running away, so then Adam responds by jumping in the air and doing a jab in 1/100th of a second, which Zeus only barely dodges. He gets his face cut on the cheek. You know, that classic anime cheek cut. And he makes a note about the moves that he's using. And then Adam starts doing a flurry of attacks, going at like 1,000th of a second, a 10,000th of a second, 100,000th of a second. And then Adam does the meteor jab. And he beats the shit out of Zeus. So while Adam was dodging every single one of Zeus's attacks, Zeus is getting hit by just about all of Adam's attacks. And then, after Zeus has taken all of these punches, Adam says, but wait, there's more. And Zeus seems genuinely freaked out by this. And then Adam does the divine axe kick. For Zeus, this would have cut Adam in half, or just completely obliterated his upper body because of how tall he is. But with Adam, it's just a low kick to Zeus's left leg. And this seems to be very painful based on everyone's reactions to it. Zeus compliments Adam. He says, you're not too bad. And they do this thing where his face looks normal instead of freakishly sunken in. And then you have the explanation of Adam's abilities, which is, of course, more Bible quoting, which I will just read now. I'll just read the description of his ability because I think the manga itself does the best job of explaining it. So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them. Genesis 1:27 of the Old Testament. Adam was designed to be a copy of the gods, and as such, he can perfectly replicate any move he lays eyes upon, even those of the gods. So, his ability is called Eyes of the Lord. Now, there has been some debate on exactly how powerful the Eyes of the Lord are. Obviously, when we look at how powerful a lot of Zeus's attacks are, the potential of the Eyes of the Lord is ridiculous, because that just means any sort of insane physical technique, or any sort of insane attack that someone can do, Adam can just copy it perfectly. But it's not clear if he's able to copy everything, such as when his opponent is using a weapon, which is probably why he makes that comment about Zeus having a weapon as well. Zeus responds by going into this weird pose and doing strange footwork, and then he dashes all the way around Adam, so he's got all these after images, and then he tries to kick Adam, and Adam, contorts his body almost the way he bends to dodge the attack, and Zeus and all the gods in the audience are shocked that Adam managed to avoid this, and then Adam starts doing the same exact footwork. Zeus can't believe it. He doesn't understand how he's doing this. And then Adam leaps into the air after doing this technique, and he kicks Zeus in the face and sends him flying halfway across the arena into a wall. Everyone is in disbelief at this. Zeus, being knocked up against a wall, he takes a look at Adam, and you have this horrifying image of Adam with Zeus's face. And Zeus recognizes that it's like he's fighting a mirror image of himself. Then Adam tells Zeus that, I don't really want to do this, so sorry about that, Pops. And calling him Pops really sets Zeus off. Zeus seems to be very excited. He seems to somehow get even bigger. I'm going to assume this is just metaphorical, unless he actually is increasing his body size even more, which is ridiculous considering how huge he already is. But he talks about how he's so happy fighting Adam, and then he does this big inhale. You can see all the air moving into his mouth. And then he calls Adam a little monkey. Now, I get that it's because they're like a lesser race, but Jesus Christ, Zeus, you're so lucky that Adam is a white guy. Let me just say that. So Zeus starts to do this move, and Hermes is intrigued by the fact that Zeus is using it against a human. So then we go into Zeus's backstory, and this is where they talk about the Titanomachy Tournament. So this is more of that creative liberty stuff I talked about in the last video. So in Greek mythology, the Titanomachy was the war with the Olympians overthrowing Kronos and the Titans. But in this, it was a tournament held to determine which gods are stronger and who would be in charge of the universe. So when we get to this part of the Titanomachy, we see a young Zeus who looks way more normal than he does now, after having defeated his father Kronos, the Titan god of time. Zeus's chin is obliterated. He took a really heavy hit to the jaw, but didn't see Kronos do it. And this is just sort of the final moments before he kills Kronos by stomping in his face. But this is the origin of the move that Zeus is about to use, the move that his father Kronos used that he couldn't even see. So Zeus has all this light coming out of his fist as he clenches it, and then the colors of everything around inverts. Like, the entire environment inverts in color. I'm sure if this is ever animated, there will be some very loud dubstep bass noise with a bunch of clicking time noises. And they show that the time tracker they've been having for what percentage of a second it's been is going off the panel. You don't see how much of a percent of a second it is, but the punch is able to exert control over all of time, the fist that surpassed time. So, based on the fact that Zeus's abilities have all been speed-based, and the fact that they are actually showing that there's supposed to be an amount of time that passed, I don't think Zeus is actually stopping time as you would see with various other anime characters that don't need to be named. What I think he's doing instead is he's reaching faster than light speeds. So it's theorized that if something is moving faster than light, then everything around it is essentially frozen in time. So that's what he's doing now. So Zeus uses this time-stopping punch on Adam. You see a blood splatter, and then you see Zeus has been punched in the face as Adam has ducked under Zeus's strike. He says, "Thanks for the cool move," pops, and then when Zeus falls to the ground, time starts to move normally again. And you see that Adam is standing over Zeus, who's down on the ground, and Zeus's head has been turned all the way around. There's a little bit of a flash forward to Ares sometime after the tournament, or at least after this round, which is the only time so far that we've seen anything taking place after the tournament. And he's asked about what he saw happening with the melee between Adam and Zeus. Since he's the god of war, I guess he's supposed to be able to process combat better than anyone else. But he talks about how 1 minute he's seeing Zeus getting ready to do this punch, and then the next thing he knows, Zeus's head is facing in the wrong direction. So everyone's super freaked out by this. It looks like Zeus, the king of the gods, the councilman of Valhalla, has been killed by Adam, the first man. So Hermes does sort of an explanation of what happened. Ares is pissed about this because, as the god of war, he should be able to see stuff like that. And then Hermes gives him this very menacing, he gives him the menacing anime glare, which prompts Ares to leave him alone. Two things that come from this. One, Hermes seems to be, he's implied to be fairly powerful. At the very least, powerful than Ares, which then goes into Ares. Ares Ares is kind of a bitch, to put it in very blatant terms. He doesn't have the best track record, which we'll get into in round 4, as we see some stuff involving him in the past. But Ares himself admits that he doesn't think he could ever beat Adam as hard as he tries. And Heimdall starts announcing how this is a huge deal. It's the birth of a new miracle for all history. Odin's pissed. Aphrodite has, how do I put this? Gigantic fucking knockers that she has these golem guys hold up for her, and they're so shocked by this that they're like shoving them up into her face. It's very funny. Then, with this, we have Gare asking why Adam is so strong, or why he's here. And this is where Brunhild explains his backstory and his hatred towards the gods. So, you have the Garden of Eden, of course, and back when Adam was alive, you have the trial of Eve, who is accused of eating the apple from the tree. If you know anything about the Bible, You know that God told Adam and Eve, don't eat anything from the tree, and the serpent came along and was like, hey, actually just eat this apple or whatever. And then, as a result of that, that gave birth to the first sin or whatever. And then, as a result, Adam and Eve were kicked from the Garden of Eden, which is why humanity doesn't live there now. But here we go into more of the creative liberties, and you learn that what actually happened was the serpent was trying to make moves on Eve, which is to say that he was sexually assaulting her, and she was not into it. And because Eve evaded his advancements, he frames her for eating the apple from the tree. So then he uses this as proof that Eve ate the apple, and as a result, she'll be kicked out of Eden. So what happens is Adam comes in, having learned that his wife is being sentenced, or is being charged with this crime, and is probably going to be sentenced to be kicked out of Eden. He shows up with 2 baskets full of the apples, and starts taking bites out of them in the court and spitting out the bits. Big flex. So you have Adam, who goes over to Eve, and he says that if she's leaving, he's going to go with her too, because of course Adam loves Eve. And Eve is very happy about this. Adam is a very lucky guy, to say the least. The serpent gets pissed about this, tries to attack Adam, then Adam uses the eyes of the Lord and just either... It's not sure if he killed the serpent or if he just cut all his arms off, or his arms and legs off. That's probably it, because that's not really a fatal injury. Probably not for God, at least. I think this is supposed to be an explanation as to why snakes don't have limbs. But anyway, you have Adam and Eve leaving Eden together, where they'll go make their own paradise on Earth. And you go back to the present. And Eve is here in the audience. Eve is a looker. Let's say that. Definitely some eye candy. And you have Heimdall talking about how Adam has fulfilled his revenge against the gods for their expulsion from Eden. And Brynhild is super relieved because she was super worried about Zeus coming in unexpectedly, and she's also quite happy because apparently Zeus is a thorn in her side. It's not really clear what's meant by that. We still haven't gotten to what exactly Brunhild's true motives are, because it seems like with how intent she is on beating the gods that she has some sort of ulterior motive. But as Heimdall is about to announce Adam as the winner of the second round of Ragnarok, Zeus pinches his mouth closed, and you see that Zeus has stood up with his head turned all the way around. So he lets Heimdall go, who runs off all scared, and then he turns his head back, which is ridiculous. He should be fucking dead. His neck is very obviously broken, but it's Zeus, so whatever. He asks Adam why he's fighting, because when he looks at him, he can't feel any hatred towards the gods from him, which is interesting considering the backstory that we just got, because Adam has all the reason in the world to hate the gods. And this is where we get into the best part of the entire series. This scene, nothing has surpassed it quite yet. We've gotten a little close, maybe, but nothing's surpassed it yet. So I'll just read Adam's speech here. You thought the same too, huh? They all say the same thing. Hatred, revenge. I don't need any of that. There is no reason why. Is there any man that needs a reason to protect his own children? Now, if you didn't already understand why people love Adam, and why Adam is so many people's favorite characters, that's why. His motivations are extremely pure and selfless. He views all of mankind as his children, and of course, like any good father figure, he will do anything to protect his kids. I assume the reason this connects with people so much, other than him just being our dad, is that this sort of selfless motivation, as far as I'm aware, is not very common in battle manga. Everyone sort of has a personal motivation, so to have Adam coming in here with something like that is really incredible. So after Adam delivers this heartfelt speech, you have something remarkable. All of humanity, regardless of race or gender or religion, begins to pray to Adam for his victory. So this is remarkable. Adam's speech and his willingness to fight to protect humanity is enough to unite all of mankind, at least in this moment. So you obviously have the humans who are very moved by this, and you even have the gods' reactions to this. Shiva is thinking how he should have gone instead. Aphrodite thinks that he's pretty cool. He's pretty good at this. Gare is crying because Adam is so damn cool, which, I mean, he is. And Brunhild admits to underestimating Adam. So after this, you have Zeus, who is talking about how it seems like he can't really keep going on with this fight without getting serious. So now we've gotten to that part of the fight, the, oh, I guess I should start being serious now part that you always get from these big, ridiculous anime battles. So Zeus says that he would prefer not to do this because it's very uncomfortable, but it's the only way. So he starts compressing his own muscles. Now, as far as I understand, I'm not like an expert on anatomy, but I'm pretty sure muscles don't work like this. But as Zeus is doing this, everyone is super grossed out. And then we go over to Odin, who we haven't seen too much of yet, but you have his ravens talking, and then Thor shows up and grabs both of them and threatens to kill them because they seem to not know what they're talking about with how confused they are about what Zeus is doing. And then Odin speaks. This is the second time in the series, and as far as I can recall, the only other time that he's spoken. And he says that I thought I told you to never transform into Thor again. So it's interesting, the only times that he has spoken is when he is talking about Thor in some way. I assume that probably has something to do with the fact that he's his son. So Thor, quote-unquote, releases the ravens, and his demeanor totally changes, and he says it was just a prank, and then he transforms into Loki. Ah, Loki, don't we all love Loki? Yeah, he's got a pretty good design, and he's also on the roster, and he will have a fairly prominent role in the fourth round as a commentator, so we'll get a lot of insight into him later on. But he talks about how he's super excited to see Zeus's serious mode because he hasn't done it in a few 100 million years. So we go back to seeing Zeus, who is compressing his own flesh, and this is apparently very painful. As you would assume, crushing your own muscle is not comfortable. But then, when he completes this transformation, there's this big explosion of steam, or this, something like that, I assume. And then you have what's one of my personal favorite sequences with Zeus coming out. There's barely any dialogue. It's almost all imagery. You have him sort of shrouded behind the fog. You have his foot coming out. And then Adam's reaction, where he puts up his guard. Like, you have the panels getting progressively closer to his face, and then you show him putting up his fists, and he looks like he's getting serious now. For the first time in the fight. He's been super casual so far. All of the gods can't believe that this is Zeus, and Gare starts shaking, and she doesn't understand why. And Brunhild says she doesn't know, but it's probably instinct. That the primal instinct within has detected an enormous threat. Now, I don't know about you, but I really love when series do shit like that, where they're like, ah yes, this threat is so great that the primal lizard brain is telling you to run the fuck away. So this is where we get the reveal of Zeus's final form, Adamas, which is extremely grotesque and disturbing and very cool. He's skinny now due to his compression of his muscles, though he's still extremely muscular. It's not like he's skeletal, it's just all very lean now. Hermes remarks that Zeus could probably stay in that form for 12 to 13 minutes normally, but after the ass beating that he's taken from Adam, it's probably 5 or 6 minutes. Shiva comments that Zeus should watch out to not go destroying heaven. So I don't know if that's hyperbole, or if in this form Zeus actually has the capacity to destroy whatever dimension heaven is. But the point is gotten across by how they built up to this form and how they're reacting to it, that the Adonis form is ridiculous. You can hear his muscles screaming as they hold back the power that he has now. So Zeus rushes in again. You get a bit of a short explanation of how Adonis works. So by condensing and stockpiling energy through compressing his muscles, that energy is then released through his punches, which now means that he is super strong. You get this great whole-page panel showing Zeus's punch, True God's Right, going up against the eyes of the Lord. They're, of course, Adam's copying Zeus's stance. So Adam punches Zeus. He's actually grazed on the cheek. This is the first time that he's taken any damage. I think a lot of people may miss this because it's just sort of easy to gloss over when you have everything else going on. But Heimdall can't believe that he's done this, and then you have Zeus going in for another strike, Eyes of the Lord. Adam copies that and does another attack. And then you have Zeus continuously attacking over and over and over again, and Adam continuously dodging and copying these attacks. And then Brunhild starts to get freaked out. She gets super freaked out by the fact that Adam's nervous system, from using the Eyes of the Lord so much, is starting to really crack under pressure. Every single attack that Zeus has been doing, or at least the attacks that he's doing in the Adonis form, would be one-hit kills. So every single time that Adam dodges and copies one of these attacks, he is literally doing it because if he doesn't, he will die. This gets especially insane when you start to see Zeus probably throwing, 100 punches in a few seconds. So Adam keeps beating on Zeus, and they have this really, really well-drawn panel of how Zeus's muscle is sort of contorting and moving around from the impact. It's all very gross and very cool. The illustrator did a great job. And then you have Loki, who is explaining how both Adam and Zeus are currently at their limits. Now, what I like about Loki so far is that he seems to be very good at analysis and explanation. He is the most competent, probably the most competent, besides maybe Hermes, of the god commentators, which makes me very excited to see when he eventually fights. But he explains how both Adam and Zeus are sort of at perfect tension by filling up these two glasses shaped after each of their faces, and explains that they're both at peak tension, like when you put just enough water into a glass that it sort of curves over the top. And that's the state that they're both in right now. And all that's left is for a trigger to happen that will cause them to flow over capacity. Now, you have a several-page sequence here where Adam and Zeus are just, they're not going blow for blow. Adam is responding and dodging to all of Zeus's attacks, even as these veins are popping out of his face around his eyes and he's bleeding. His eyes are super dilated. You can tell that is not healthy at all. And then you have this page, another spread, where they talk about how, despite the fact that a mere graze would be fatal, and then they show Adam and Zeus throwing all of these punches at each other. It's just ridiculous. Adam does not falter in the face of all of these attacks. So there's more of a back and forth. Loki remarks on how both of them are not faltering. When I originally watched this fight, it was through a video on a channel called an ISD, and during this sequence, they used the OST 100 Year War from Berserk, and it is fantastic for this scene. So I recommend, if you can, to listen to that OST while watching this. But as these two are going at it and at it and at it, they're just both at peak perfect tension as they keep punching each other, or more, Zeus doing all of these insane one-hit kill attacks and Adam dodging and sending back every single one of them. It just keeps going on and on. So the tension, like the actual tension that you're feeling from reading it, knowing the stakes that are there for Adam, just keeps getting higher and higher. Eventually, what happens, though, is there is the trigger, where Adam punches Zeus, and a bit of blood hits his eyes, and Adam's eyes break. Now, I'm not sure if that's literal. I know some people have argued about whether that's literal or if it's supposed to be figurative, about how finally Adam's eyes hit their limit and they broke. But regardless, Adam can't use the eyes of the Lord anymore. And then he starts getting beat on by Zeus. He takes a punch to the face, but somehow survives. And then he just starts getting beat on over and over and over again. He's blinded, and he's still trying to use all of his strength to block all of these supposedly one-hit kill attacks from Zeus. I would assume that because of the damage Zeus has been taking, he's probably not able to use his attacks at full power anymore. But it reaches a point where Cain and Abel and the rest of the humans are begging Adam to stop fighting, to just surrender so that he can live, even if it means a loss. So Adam has become, he's endeared himself in the eyes of humanity so much that they would be willing to take a loss in this tournament meant to determine their survival, if it at least meant that Adam would get to survive. But even then, he just stands there blocking all of these ridiculous punches. And as he's doing that, Adam thinks about how somewhere out there there's a baby crying, and that it's fine because their dad will be there to protect them. And Zeus does this big overhead strike, breaking Adam's guard, and everyone thinks that's the end. And then Adam reaches out and grabs Zeus's hair. Everyone's weirded out by this, and Adam says, "Found you." Now, Odin freaks the fuck out. This is the most emotion we've seen from him at all in the series so far. Loki looks amazed. One of the gods says that guy's fucking insane, which is pretty accurate. So Adam intentionally took this potentially fatal strike so that he could grab onto Zeus now that he's blind, and then continue beating the shit out of him. So then you enter the final clash for this round, which is about 2 pages of Adam and Zeus grabbed onto each other, and with one arm each going blow for blow and just continuously laying into each other. There's this fantastic page with Adam yelling and bringing his fist back, getting ready to strike Zeus again. And this is where we reach the end of the fight. Adam delivers a blow to Zeus and knocks him to the ground onto his knees. Everyone is shocked. And Zeus goes out of the Adonis form. There's like this big explosion of steam or whatever as he goes back to normal. And Zeus says that it's over. And everyone's like, huh? What do you mean it's over? Adam is standing triumphantly over Zeus, who's been brought down to his knees. And Zeus says, oh, you didn't notice? He's already dead. So Adam dies standing on his feet. Yeah. Yeah, there's not really much you could say about that. Dying on your feet is like the most manliest anime thing out there. You know, if someone dies on their feet, they're definitely the real deal. But Zeus, having been brought down to his knees, remarks on how Adam managed to put him on his ass, and he tells him, even though he's dead, "You're one hell of a man." And then admits that if it were a contest of endurance, if it weren't like a battle to the death, that Adam would win without question. And he remarks, "What a shame." And as Adam's body starts to fade away, you see the Valkyrie Regenleaf sort of depart from him, and his body disintegrates up into the air. All of humanity is crying and reaching out, and Heimdall announces that the second round of Ragnarok has been concluded, with Zeus as the victor. Like I mentioned in the last video, when you compare Thor versus Lulu to the fights that come after it, it just pales in comparison, really. And that definitely starts in this fight, just based on Adam alone, his character motivations, and the way that he fights using those motivations is leagues beyond more compelling than Lulu could even fucking dream of being, with his hunger for battle. Something, as I mentioned earlier, that people seem to forget a lot of the time with Adam is that Adam was not brought to fight because he was the most powerful human or anything. Adam was brought on as the human with the strongest will, and that is most obviously seen in the fact that he literally kept fighting even after death in order to protect his children. Adam's will is probably what makes him such a good, compelling, and fan-favorite character. The fact that he has the will to fight gods, to become blinded, to die, just to protect his kids, is part of what makes him such a great character. You also have the character development of Zeus throughout this fight, which is actually quite interesting. You had him at the start of the series and at the start of the fight, him being very childish and dismissive of mankind. He saw Adam more as an object of entertainment when things started getting started. He was really just more interested in getting to cut loose on someone. But by the end of the fight, you have Zeus referring to Adam as one hell of a man, as compared to when he called him kiddo at the start of the fight. It goes to show something that is a theme going throughout these fights, at least the first three, which is something they actually make mention of in the fourth fight, is that the humans that they send out to fight are able to move the hearts of the gods. So even when the humans do lose a round, it's not like they didn't die for nothing at all. And this also plays into the fact that this series is not just about the human fighters. While they are the protagonists, you have the other half of the coin in the gods, because obviously Zeus got his own backstory thing, and he has he has motivations, but not like Adam's, obviously. But what you've seen with Thor and Zeus is that through their conflicts with their human combatants, is that they've developed and become more, in Zeus's case, is definitely humbled by what humanity has shown themselves, or what they have to offer. So, yeah, I don't really have much else to say about that. I think the Adam versus Zeus fight really speaks for itself. If you've read through it, like me doing this video, just sort of summing up what happens and then giving my opinions about it doesn't really do justice to the fight itself. Obviously, read through it yourself. it's very obvious as to why this fight is so good in the minds of so many people. It's definitely where this series goes from being a good battle manga to being a great battle manga, because the sort of emotional investment that you get in Adam, you will get in all of the fights after this. Maybe not to the same extent, but that was something that wasn't present really at all in the first fight, other than just wanting humanity to win. Now it's more than just that. It's you want these people to win because you like them, obviously, and also, for the most part, you want them to achieve whatever the goal that they're after is. Well, that's really all I can say about the second round. I mean, it's something. What can I say? After this, I'll be doing a video on the third round, and then of course the fourth after that. And then when the new chapter comes out, which will be in about a day and a half, I will be doing a video on that. I may do that before I do the videos for the third and fourth round, just depending on whenever I get around to doing those. But yeah, if you enjoyed this, please like and subscribe, because obviously I'll be doing more videos on this series and in this format, so if you enjoyed those, obviously stick around. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you around.